Hello, spooky people, and welcome back to That Spooky Life. I am your host, Miranda, and I am super glad that you are here. So, full disclosure, gonna start right out the door with that honesty. You are listening to this in 2020, and I am speaking to you from the past. Ooh. I am recording this episode on New Year's Eve 2019. So, if you hear some pops and a potential war zone, it's just because everybody is doing fireworks outside, but I am looking forward to the new year, and from past me to present you, I hope that your New Year's was safe and enjoyable, and that 2020 holds nothing but joy, surprises, and success for you. I have some good stories today that are sort of on theme, and I would like to state ahead of time that I do not condone the use of illegal substances. In my youth, I dabbled with nothing more than marijuana specifically, but I had many varied reasons for that. At the time that the story I'm going to share took place, there were no rulings on the thing known as spice, and there had also not been the horrible things that it did to people come out yet. It was very early on, and I do not recommend it. And I wanted to state that ahead of time because you can never be too careful with that stuff. So, in any event, I judge no one for the choices that they make, and I support you for whatever is best in your life. So, starting off today, I am going to share a story that I have ever so lovingly titled The Time That I Time Traveled on Spice. My story starts with a birthday trip for a friend of mine where we went out of town, and I am not going to use anybody's names just to be sure. However, I was with 4 other friends of mine, one of whom was having a birthday. The birthday girl had requested we go visit 2 other friends, and that's why we went. And there was many preparations made, both in obtaining of things to smoke and also just some fun stuff to do, basically. So we went and we were having a great time. We all slept in one room because they were basically renting a room in a house they shared with other people. So I believe the second day that we were there, I had not partaken of any of the spice because I didn't know if I would have an allergy, what it was going to do to me. I was very careful. I'm always very cautious with things like that because I have so many allergies. I never know what is going to hit me sideways. Being days gone by, days of my youth, of yore, as it were, I had agreed that I would partake of the marijuana. I sound like I'm 60 saying that. I agreed that I was going to actually get stoned with them at least once while I was there. So we had been very cautious if they were trading off on, oh, we're going to smoke spice this time instead, etc. And I had gone to take a shower. Well, when I came back, the bowl was passed, and I hit it expecting it to be marijuana. It was not. And the moment that it happened, it was too late, and I realized, and I looked to my friend, and I said, this was not what I was expecting it to be. And my friend was like, oh, no, I am so sorry. Because it had been passed without, I didn't ask, I should have. I just assumed that somebody would say. And then, of course, they were in the middle of a conversation and not paying attention, and nobody thought, oh, hey, wait, don't do that. So never having partaken of this before, I truly now understand why Native Americans and other religions and things like that use the mind-altering substances to go on spirit quests and spirit journeys and things like that. Because, wow, if it opens up a part of your mind that you don't normally use or things like that, I get it now. I never understood that before. Because, usually if you just smoke marijuana, you get lazy and munchy. Well, I completely disassociated for a good 30 minutes or more. I couldn't keep my finger on, or like my mental finger on a thought. I was just trying to remember to breathe. And I was doing my best to be like, okay, focus, drink some water, come down from this. And oddly, I was taken by a memory from my childhood. And the event that occurred when I was a child was on Easter, and I had a brand new Easter dress. And we went to my paternal grandmother's house, which was a nice old Victorian house in Grant Park down in Atlanta. Now, granted, this was still at the time that Grant Park was not the safest neighborhood, and bodies would be found in Grant Park and things like that. So, in addition to being a super old house, it was in a neighborhood that super not good stuff would happen. And I'm flat out just going to tell you right now, that house was really haunted. I both loved and was terrified of most of it, but I'm in my Easter dress out in the garden. Nobody's paying attention to me for a moment, and being 3 or 4 years old as I was, I of course go to play in the grass and the flowers, which also happens to have a lot of Georgia red clay that is currently mud because it had been raining. I get covered in mud in my brand new Easter dress. My mother snatches me up, and I am immediately taken into the bathroom. Now, this bathroom, to my memory, was very large. Probably not nearly as large as I remember it to be, considering my size at the time, but it was still a sizable bathroom. It also had the most hideous wallpaper I can remember ever seeing in my life, with large flowers on vines with big leaves that were in sort of an olivey, springy green color. And the flowers themselves were coral. Picture, if you will, a sagey, springy green and coral on a white background. And then all of the details, like the curtains and the carpet and the towels, were coral to match. Very vividly do I remember this, though I have not seen that house since I was very young. However, it was also the first time I ever took a bath in a clawfoot tub, because there was a clawfoot tub in this bathroom, and it was awesome. So I'm stripped of my muddy clothes, and they're put to soak as I'm dumped, not unceremoniously, into the tub, but I mean, I get why my mom was mad. And I am given a bath. While I'm being bathed and having a great time, because this bathtub is super cool, my paternal grandmother goes to get a towel or some lotion or some, I don't know, she went to get something for my mom and walked out and closed the door. While I'm playing, having a good time, my mom's trying to get me clean, and the door opens, and I look up, expecting my grandmother to have returned, and there is an outline shadow of a person who is there but not there, and it's not my grandmother, and I blinked and it didn't go away, and instead the door closed again. I started squealing and screaming and was terrified and told my mom that there was a ghost behind her. And she had heard the door open and close and turned to see that there was nobody there, and just assumed that somebody had come in to use the bathroom and then seen we were in there. We were not the only people in the house, and left when they'd seen that the bathroom was occupied. I swore up and down what I saw. So, this is the memory that takes me when I happen to be completely disassociated from reality on a mind-altering substance. Except, in the memory, it started in the garden, and then I watched it like a movie. I was not in the position of myself as a toddler. I was watching myself as a toddler and watching my mother as like a third party. Well, then it gets to the part where I'm taken to the bathroom, and I get sort of like pushed out of the bathroom as the door closes. I'm like, well, am I in my paternal grandmother's place? Like, what's going on here? And so the bathroom door is closed, and I hear stuff on the other side, not having experienced it from this side, because my personal experience is me on the other side of the door in the clawfoot tub. So I open the door to go back in and see the toddler me start screaming and close the door. Well, finally, they got enough water and some food in me that I started to become coherent again. And my friends are like, oh my God, are you okay? What happened? And I said, well, no, I'm fine. And now that I'm sort of coming back to it, I had a very strange experience. Of course, my best friend, who was also present, was like, "Oh, good. I don't have to call your husband and your mother and tell them that this happened. I was really not looking forward to that idea." And to her credit, fair. That's completely fair. So I relay my experience, much as I have just relayed it to you all. And my best friend's like, "That's weird. Why was that the thing that you went to?" And I was like, "I don't know." And I'm still not great, but I was coming around and getting better. I could feel my feet again, things like that. And my other friend, who lived in the house that we were visiting, looks at me and says, "Dude, what if whatever that opened up in your brain, you traveled back through time and the shadowy figure in the doorway that you saw was yourself, and you scared yourself as a toddler because you astrally traveled back in time?" Now, after the fact, currently as I speak to you now, I have no idea. I have learned a lot about fixed points in time and the idea that time does not work in a straight line, as many believe. There are numerous conversations that I have had. I don't know if it's actually recorded out there, but I was at a convention in Las Vegas once where Grant Morrison explained how he didn't believe that time was linear and we could revisit things through the spiral that was time, etc. I'll see if I can find a video if it's recorded and link it to you guys. It's a very interesting conversation. But to be perfectly honest, I don't know. I was not in control of my faculties. I had disassociated entirely. I really genuinely have no honest answer as to whether or not I believe I traveled back in time and was the thing in the door. I don't. I could have just been seeing it through a ghost's eyes. I could have not have been time traveling at all and it was just a vivid, basically, trip. I don't know. However, at the time, my friend's fiance punched him in the arm and said, "That's not the kind of shit you say to somebody coming off of a bad trip." And I thank her for that, and I appreciate her for that, because she was right. I flipped out in my own head, because that was too much for me to contemplate at the time and obsess over for literally the rest of the day. That being said, however, it is definitely one of the stranger things that has occurred to me in my life, and it's kind of honestly cool to think about. The idea that accidentally going on a vision quest, I ended up back in time at a memory I hadn't thought about in years, but was legitimately a paranormal experience for me at the time, not necessarily because, oh my God, proof there's a ghost, but it was an experience that I absolutely could not explain. I know what I saw, I know the way that my mind interpreted it, but I have no real explanation for what happened, so it could very easily be considered one of my first paranormal experiences. I have no proof one way or the other of what exactly I experienced when I traveled back to that moment in time, as it were, be it contained to my own mind or not. However, I thought it an interesting enough experience to share with you guys and see maybe what you think. Have you ever had an experience where it feels like you traveled to another time or place? Have you astrally projected and ended up out of sync with time? Or have you had some strange experiences with some mind-altering chemicals? Hopefully all in safe environments and in the company of people that you trusted and one time as an experiment in college kind of thing. Needless to say, I have not partaken of the substance known as spice since, and a lot of research and experiences have come out to show that it was not necessarily a safe thing to do. I don't recommend it, and I wouldn't have even done it that first time were it not for the fact that it was a genuine accident. And I will say for the record that I don't think my friends were trying to do it to me on purpose. I genuinely think it was one of those situations where, caught up in conversation, the detail was missed, because my friends were genuinely apologetic and genuinely concerned. So, that's my spooky story for the week, and the tale that I will forever call that one time that I time traveled back into the past on Spice. So, our listener story today comes from storyteller and veteran friend of the show, Astrid. Thank you for sending in your story, Astrid. I've actually got a couple of hers coming up, and I am excited to share them because they are pretty much terrifying. I think you guys are going to be really intrigued to hear these. Without any preamble, I'm going to dive right in. As usual, I have not read all of this, enough to know that it will fit sort of on theme with my story for the week, but most of my reactions are going to be live on air with you guys. So let's dive right in. Astrid writes, I just heard you tell the hex bag story and ask about the gunshots. Lol, yes, they were a human being. Oh dear. Oh dear. It was the neighbor that was in the duplex attached to ours. When our house and theirs got raided, we found out he was a serious drug dealer. My mother's landlord told us that he denied his friend to move into the duplex my mother lived in, so he decided to fire his handgun into the ground outside our windows. In the morning, we went out and saw the separate bullet holes in our yard. When we called the cops shortly after, they dug up the bullets. Now on to the story. Well, that's a story in and of itself, girl. Damn. Oof. I don't like stories that have like digging bullets out of the ground, and I guess it's better than digging bullets out of other things, and I'm just going to leave it at that and move on to the story. It could have been a PK experience, but I'm not sure. The only mischief I felt was to those that slept in the bedroom attached to our half bath. A little layout of the house. When entering the home, there's the living room, and if you walk through, you will see a large kitchen. If standing at the kitchen doorway to your right is the doorway to the garage, there's another story about that oh so lovely area of the house. Oh Lord, I don't like this house. This is at least the second story that I have heard personally from this house, and you're saying there's another one. I don't like this. That house is no bueno, and it should be burned to the ground after everything, all the people and the things that you care about are pulled out of it, but that house should be burned down. Salt the earth. Anyway, if you're standing in the living room facing the TV wall, which was once our computer wall, to your left is a hallway that goes back about 8 feet. The first door on your right is the offending bathroom. Take 2 steps, and the only room on your left is the small room with the wood paneling. Oh, I remember that one. In front of you is my mother's room. Always has been. Well, she got the biggest room in the house. Obviously, Mama, yeah. Then to your right is the room we will be talking about. This room is bland, but always smelled of vodka. This is my sister's room. My sister has been an alcoholic since she was 12, and at the time of this story, she was in her late 30s. I feel bad. My sister hated that room. She would sleep in the living room most days. We were graveyard workers. At this time, my son was 2.5, and we moved back with my family because my now ex-husband and I split. I was working at the hospital. Want to guess what I was? A cleaner. Ha ha ha. I was housekeeping. I worked from 10:30 p.m. to 8:30 a.m., and most days I didn't get any sleep because I had a 2-year-old that decided mommy sleeping was the pinnacle time for mommy to be a jungle gym. I feel that, fam. He would leave my sister alone, though, so she would have me sleep in her room. She never told me about the times that she would wake up and not be able to move because she knew I'd blame her drinking and would try to talk her into sobriety again. Well, one day, my son was with his father, my mother was out shopping with my sister, my oldest nephew was a young teen, so he was causing hell somewhere else, so it was just me and my youngest nephew in the house. Now this is where it gets weird and lengthy. I don't lucid dream often, but when I do, it's in 3 homes. I know, weird after hearing your story, I was like, what the actual fuck? Oh yeah, with the lucid dreaming in the house and all that, that's fair. House number 1 is this sad house where I experienced deaths or sad news. It's in an old 2-story ranch-style house with a wraparound porch and a swing where I sit and cry and moan. House number 2 is what I call the imagination house. This is where all the amazing, fanciful stuff happens, like opening a door to an old-style theater, and it has a beach instead of a stage where I get to watch the sunset. House number 3, I call this one the horror house. This is where I go to get chased by things and interact with things that want to do me harm. Don't go there. Don't don't go to house number 3. That's a bad place to be. I just do not recommend. 10 out of 10, do not recommend. The house is a rundown version of the first house. Paint is peeling, the wallpaper is outdated and peeling off, and the place always smells like sulfur. I don't know what that means. Now, I knew it was a bad dream when I entered it, but something that horrified me is we were in the attic bedroom area. I had never been there. Like, ever. I had been chased to the basement, I had been chased throughout the entire house and even outside. I had seen the door that led up there but had never gone up. It was my mother, my sister, my son, and myself. We are all the sensitives, and we are all the believers of our family. My mother was standing at the door that led to the stairs, so there was a door at the bottom of the stairs and one at the top that led into the room. She kept telling us that she was going crazy and there was now sounds of someone walking around the house. I heard heavy footsteps and the sound of glass bottles clinking around. My mother stopped talking when she heard the steps on the stairs. She stared at the door like it was going to eat her, and when the knock came, she jumped like someone screamed. My sister got up to stop my mother from opening the door, but I could feel that she was going to be too late. I flung myself on top of my son to protect him from whatever was coming. When I landed on the bed, I felt my sister's fingers graze my spine from being flung from the door. I heard her hit the wall and felt her body land on the bed above my head. This is the part that still shakes me up. I looked up, and there was a male face that was inches from mine. His skin was a very pale shade, like almost paper white, but I could see veins under his skin that were a blue-purple tinge. He had no iris, the whole thing was pupil, but his eyes were yellowing. His hair was an off shade of dirty blonde, more brown than blonde. But around his peeling and crusty lips there was this weird rash that almost seemed like he was losing oxygen and it was taking a toll on him. That is horrifying. Like, I don't like the fact that it's night and that I'm sitting in a room alone right now. That is horrifying. He looked me in the eyes and in a voice that sounded like gravel being ran through a wood chipper said, "Let me in. All you have to do is say yes." So a side note, if it has to ask permission, the answer is always no. Good advice. We're going to have 2 witchy tips today. We're going to have this one from Astrid, which is, if it has to ask for permission, always say no. Always. Good things don't ask permission to be in your life. I screamed like a B-rated horror queen and woke up, still in the position of me protecting my son, but my head was turned towards the closet. I couldn't move. My body felt like it was full of cement, and I tried to wiggle anything. Somehow I got my eyes open and looked forward, and I saw his face in the closet. He was staring at me with so much hatred I almost peed myself because my only thought was, I'm going to die. I started to demand my body to move, but I couldn't, so I started to try and call out to my youngest nephew. I could hear myself, and my screams for help only came out as a whisper. The sound coming from me was a sad, soft sound that sounded like a choked rabbit in a snare. I kept screaming and screaming, but only came out as a pathetic whisper. He started to reach for me from the closet. Now there was a lamp next to the closet that I kept on because I was afraid of the dark. In this fucking house I can see why. Sleep with all the lights on all the time. Damn. I could see his hand and it was pale as his face, but the tips of his fingers were blue purplish black like they had lost circulation. He then repeated, "Let me in. All you have to do is say yes." I screamed no. That came out a scream, and it was like my mind finally caught up. I could move. I hopped off the bed and ran out of that room. I ran into the living room, panicked and shaking. My youngest nephew came up and was like, "What's wrong?" I told him, and he was like, "Oh, you saw what my mom was seeing. That's why she sleeps in the living room." So the reason I know it was her alcoholism that caused it was because all of his sickly nature was caused by seriously bad alcohol poisoning. I never slept in that room again. I refused, and until she stops drinking, I can't make him go away. Now the next story is your choice. The attic or a job story. Ugh! I don't know if I want to know what's in the attic. I really don't. Oh, girl, that is some shit right there. First of all, I am a full supporter of the fact that your sister needs help. And I am also aware as a family member to someone with an addiction problem, that there is nothing that you can do until they decide that they need help. And I get that, and you have my sympathy, as does she. If there's anything I can do, reach out. I'd be happy to help if I can, because those things are no joke, and that thing needs to get the hell out of that house. Like, ew. I don't like this house. This house sounds straight out of a horror movie. Ugh. So I'm actually going to make sure to post this to Instagram. What do you guys want to hear? Do you guys want to hear the addict story or the job story next? Because I'm pretty sure I've got at least one job story in the works, but I'm not sure it's the same one. So we'll see if we can get some feedback on Instagram at ThatSpookyLifePodcast. Feel free to follow me. And when this episode comes out, I will make sure to post, hey, what do you guys want to hear, to it, and you guys can let me know in the comments. So, thank you again very much, Astrid, for a wonderfully terrifying story and letting me know that there is somewhere else that I am never going ever, being that house. And that is our listener story for the week. So my witchy tip for the day is actually going to be introduction of one of my personal favorite stones, and one that has served me well in the past. And we are going to talk today about the metaphysical properties of jade. I am reading from charmsoflight.com, and their write-up is one that I found that my experiences resonate with the most. I did a lot of reading on this stuff, and this one seems to cover the most of what I have experienced with jade. So, what is jade? Jade is an ornamental mineral and is a 12th anniversary gemstone. Serpentine is the correct name for new jade. As according to their site, jade associations for the chakras is it is associated with the heart chakra. In the traditional chakras, root is red. It's going up in the rainbow to where the crown is purple. So the heart chakra is believed to be green, and since jade is a green stone, that's a pretty decent way to figure out what its association might be. They say that the zodiac associations are Aries, Taurus, Gemini, and Libra. It is an earth element stone, and of course typical colors include creamy white, pale green to emerald green, blue, lavender, mauve, and pink. There are different kinds of jade. Jade is a symbol of serenity and purity. It signifies wisdom gathered in tranquility. It increases love and nurturing. A protective stone, jade keeps the wearer from harm and brings harmony. Jade attracts good luck and friendship, and it stabilizes the personality and promotes self-sufficiency. Soothes the mind, releasing negative thoughts, stimulates ideas, and can also be a dream stone. Jade brings insightful dreams. It aids emotional release, especially of irritability. Jade encourages you to become who you really are. So there's other things. There's color and healing with jade, green jade, white jade. It's got a bunch of different actual associations depending upon which particular type of jade you're using, and I absolutely encourage you to read into it. Some people have more success with stones than others. I have friends who are not witches that use stones to promote certain energies in their life. I also have friends who are witches that swear by stones, and then I also have friends who are witches that don't use stones at all because they absolutely do not understand rocks, basically. And it's really just what works best for you. Some people are right-handed, some people are left-handed, some people are left-eye dominant, some people are right-eye dominant. Some people can work really well with stones, some people don't work with stones at all, and some people will find that they can use certain stones and not other ones. Anybody who tells you that you have to have crystals to be a witch or a psychic or any certain way is probably trying to sell you something. So that was the description from charmsoflight.com, and literally is the first thing that comes up when you search jade metaphysical properties. As a witch, I have my most powerful tool in the entirety of my toolbox being Google, obviously. Jade has always been a very precious mineral, in a way, kind of like how lapis lazuli was more precious to the Egyptians than gold, because the lapis looks like the nighttime sky with all the flecks and the little clouds and stuff in it. So they believed that they were the eye of the gods, and therefore that was more, and could be used to actually communicate with the gods. So lapis was more valuable to them than gold itself, where jade was a very valuable resource further east. So from crystalvaults.com, which is a very nicely laid out site, I prefer the fact that they've got a couple of pictures and then like a lot of information. Jade is said to bless whatever it touches, serving mankind across the globe for nearly 6,000 years. For primitive peoples in the British Isles, its toughness and ability to polish and sharpen made it a favored stone for axe heads, knives, and weapons. Indigenous tribes of Mexico, Central and South America, and New Zealand carved it into deity masks and ritual artifacts, even cast it into wells as an offering to the water spirits for fresh and plentiful water. Jade has been the most highly esteemed stone in China throughout recorded history, and was valued for its beauty and powers of healing and protection. An endless variety of gems, vessels, incense burners, beads, burial items, and statues have been wondrously carved from jade, as well as musical instruments and pendants inscribed with poetry. Jade is most valued for its metaphysical properties. It is the ultimate, quote, dream stone, revered in ancient cultures as well as today. To access the spiritual world, gain insight into ritualistic knowledge, encourage creativity, and dream solve, it is cherished as a protective talisman, assuring long life and a peaceful death. It is considered a powerful healing stone, amulet of good luck and friendship, and jade signifies wisdom gathered in tranquility, dispelling the negative and encouraging one to see oneself as they truly are. Basically, it's just like a really fire stone. I have discovered in my life that my calling is one of art, be it here creating some sort of content for you guys, or painting or drawing or anything like that. In this lifetime, I am an artist. That requires, well, it doesn't require, but that comes with a side serving of kind of being distracted a lot. And while the ADD doesn't help, I am constantly thinking of a new story, to tell, or a new painting or a new drawing or some kind of creative endeavor from my imagination that needs to be realized in the real world somehow. Therefore, there are a lot of grounding stones, things like hematite and onyx and obsidian. Obsidian less so than onyx and hematite, but even wearing like pewter, I start to feel heavy and too anchored and too grounded and headaches and things like that if I wear pewter or onyx or hematite for too long, basically. I can wear it to a function if it matches what I'm wearing, but beyond that, I should go ahead and take it off. And there's other stones that affect me differently. And I know friends who have different stones and associations that they can't carry with them or wear because of allergies, flat out allergies. I have a friend who's allergic to gold. They have to have platinum. It's crazy. I know it sounds like a convenient excuse, but I promise you I've seen it. It's not. They break out in hives with anything less than platinum. Jade, however, has done me well in my life. I have a little stone that I have used as a healing stone for years. And the more that I learn about it, the more that I want to keep that little stone on me. I also have a little hand-carved jade dragon that a friend bought for me over 20 years ago, I think at this point, or close to it. And his tail broke at one point, and I glued it back on. And that little dragon and I have been through a lot together. And I love him. And he is my buddy. I have noticed that regardless of color, jade tends to be, or feel to me and to my filters of the way that I see the world, tends to be a very happy, effervescent stone. It's not airy. It is very much an earth stone, as it were, which I'm sure some of you are listening and going, but aren't all stones earth? Well, yes, technically. You can use any stone for earthwork because they are all of the earth and the minerals and whatnot. But there are other associations that a stone may be able to channel due to particular makeups or things like that, even so much as color, if you choose to. Some are easier to use for things like air or fire than others, and therefore that is where a lot of their associations came from. It just depends on what kind of energy it responds to. So, I love my little jade, and I really honestly can't have enough. I don't have a lot, to be perfectly honest, because it's not exactly cheap. But every little bit of jade I've ever had has been a friend. And there have been times where I've had a couple of pieces of jade before, and I really love apple jade. Apple jade is one of my favorites. I remember at 2 different points in my life, I had 2 little jade pieces, and they ended up going to live with friends of mine. Because just one day I was with them, and they said something, and I was like, oh, I found this jade for you. I've been carrying it around, and it just let me know, basically, that it belongs to you. It's very friendly, and of course, there's not actually words to it. It's not like a little anthropomorphic personification of a little jade, but there's just an inkling that you get at times, or the timing lines up. They say, man, I haven't felt really good. I feel like I could use some like healing energies, and your fingers brush over the jade in your pocket while you were reaching for something else. And you go, oh, well, maybe this is for you then. Either way, I recommend for those looking for a healing stone, those looking for perhaps dream work or the protection that your happiness bubble can create and let things bounce off of. If you are in the market for a stone that may be able to help with that, I recommend jade. Do your research, and I mentioned the 2 sites that I pulled from today, that they both have some really good information. I didn't cover all of it. Definitely check them out, and like I said, the most powerful tool in a witch's toolbox is Google. It can also be her worst enemy, so you got to be careful and actually, compare sites, see what's the same. Don't believe everything that you read on the internet, but as long as you do some solid research and make sure that you're not just believing the first thing that you read, Google is powerful. It is my favorite wand? Scrying mirror. It's my favorite scrying mirror, Google. I've learned a lot. I've also seen a lot of bullshit, so be careful. That is my witchy tip for this week. Get you some jade. Especially if you got like addiction spirits in your closet, fam. But that brings us to the end of this episode. So as usual, if you have a paranormal experience you would like me to share on the show, please send it to ThatSpookyLifePodcast@gmail.com. I always need listener stories. I always love hearing from you guys. If you would be interested in hearing me have guests on the show, let me know that too. You can send it to the email address, or as previously mentioned, you can come follow me on Instagram. Leave it in the comments. Drop me a message, something of the sort. I was talking to a friend of mine, one of my medium friends, who has some crazy stories. I'm going to try and get him to send one in. And I also asked him how he felt about potentially being a guest on the show. So maybe we'll give it a test run and see what you guys think. And if that's the case, I think it would be very fun to have some guests come on and share some personal experiences of their own. But I also am here to make the content that you guys want to hear. So let me know. Until next week, when we dive back into the in-between, I hope that you have a wonderful first week of 2020. I hope that any resolution you make is easy to keep and brings you great joy. And until next time, keep living that spooky life. Bye.